Good morning everyone. We are going to continue the session on postmodernism. The 5 major points regarding certain writers, major figures of modernism, and what are the main features that you could note down in their writings. That's what we saw in five different points given in the text, like emphasis on impressionism and subjectivity, or the stream of consciousness techniques, the using of stream of consciousness technique. See, objectivity, you are moving away from objectivity, you have to take care, you have to take effort to bring something, or to get the interpretation of some writing, some novels, you have to make your brain work out. It's not readily available as you have a plot summary or something. Now regarding other details like fragmentation, blurring of the distinctions between genre, or the writings about writing something new, the way they would like to take the theme or select the theme, subject to matter, all these they tried to bring a kind of variety. Okay, that's what we saw in 5 of the points given in the text. Now the overall result of these shifts is to produce a literature which seems dedicated to experimentation and innovation. You cannot obviously you cannot expect, or you couldn't expect, immediate positive response when you bring something entirely new. They had to face a lot of problems, they have to lot of criticism, because it was with much experimentation and innovation of style. Innovation, you're innovating, you're making it new, you're not following the traditional style and structures. So after its high point, that's why you call modernism, you divide into different sectors, like high modernism, a period when modernism was at its height. In the beginning it didn't get that much prominence, acceptance, but later people began to think, yes, what they say is right. After the aftermath of World War, which shattered the whole world and the systems, everything, you need such a literature, you need the representation in this way itself, as the modernists say. So their innovation, experimentation, everything was accepted or taken in different ways during different times of modernism itself, different time period of modernism, and it's staying in the intellectual sector. We are yet going on with the modernism itself. We are still talking about modernism. We haven't entered into our topic of discussion, which is postmodernism. You know, modernism is not the modern literary theory that we are going to discuss. But without having a discussion on our idea about modernism, there is no point in our going about or looking into the details of postmodernism. Definitely it has something to do with, if not as a continuation. Some connection you can mention, you can find out there. That's why we have to look at the features of both. And as an introduction, I am talking about modernism, the tendency, the acceptance, rejection, everything in detail. We cannot leave out those points. So here, its retreat considerably in the 1930s, partly, no doubt, because of the tension generated in a decade of political and economic crisis. You can definitely mark out the economic and the political crisis that the whole world had to face during this time period because of the world wars. 2 of the World War and in between time period, or immediately after the World War, you know how the world and its situation looked like. Tension generated in a decade of political and economic crisis. It was an unsettled situation, unsettled crisis. The crisis was that much higher as far as the World War and the aftermath it left out were concerned. But a resurgence took place in the 1960. Think about that year, 1960. Not immediately after the World War, but after a few years, world is trying to heal its wounds of World War, the problems, the crisis of different kinds. So it's about a coming back, 1960s, a decade which has interesting points of similarity with the 1920s when modernism was at its height. Modernism was at its height in 1920s. It was continuous, it was going on, but World War as a whole again brought much crisis in different areas, not just in political, not just in economic sector or political sector, but every area regarding art, different kinds of arts if you check out. Everywhere this problem, the crisis could be felt. However, modernism never regained the preeminence it had enjoyed in the earlier period. We will see what happened with the modernist tendency afterwards. I told you by 1960s, world was coming back to its normality, healing its wounds of the World War, the crisis left out by the impact left out by the negative impact left out by the World War. Everything was there, and 1960s you can see a time of resurgence. But it is pointed out here very clearly that modernism never regained its preeminence. Now we are moving to the discussion or moving to the point of postmodernism coming to our way. Okay. However, modernism never regained the preeminence, the kind of appreciation it had enjoyed in the earlier period. This gives us a rough indication of what and when modernism was. Now next the question you see here is, does postmodernism then continue it or oppose it? The same question that we saw at the very beginning of the discussion on post-structuralism and deconstruction. This was the kind of question that we saw at the very beginning of that essay or lesson. Does postmodernism just a continuity or an opposition? Otherwise, if it is the same or if it is just about a continuity, why do you need a term one like this? Postmodernism. So we can assume there must be some differences, notable differences, and we will see what they are. To decide this, we need to attempt a working definition of the second term, that is postmodernism, which is our main term of discussion here in this session. As a starting point, we can take a selection of the most readily available descriptions of postmodernism. We are taking postmodernism as a term is described in different ways in different textbooks available. But we are going to take one of the prominent examples, prominent definitions, so that you will get an idea. Let us see whether we will get an idea. It's from J. A. Cutton's Dictionary of Literary Terms and Literary Theory. We are going to take the meaning or the definition for postmodernism. Postmodernism is characterized by an eclectic approach. That's by a liking for aleatory writing or for parody and pastiche. Actually, in beginning theory, under the tenets of postmodernism, you can see this is just one of the features where postmodernism has the tendency to mix up between genres, different genres. They do it in a celebratory mood. They don't want to they do not want to, because it's a modern literary theory. They do not want to categorize or differentiate between high art or low art, popular art. Actually, that is the term. Art of the elite class, art of the common people. They didn't want to distinguish or differentiate art in such ways. It's an easygoing mixing up between genres they wanted to. It's an eclectic approach. It's a kind of incorporating mode. They are with the mood of incorporating different genres from different time periods They didn't want to go for such a distinguishing. So you see parody, pastiche, which were the types of writings that were considered to be very lowly, very low kind. Unlike you talk about an epic or tragedy, you know how much elitism is attached with the extent of elitism attached with the tragedy, epic. It's not as you talk about satire and comedy, you know how much prominence is given by Aristotle. In his text, the whole text is giving way or giving maximum explanation for the features of tragedy, the importance of tragedy. So that certain writings are set or given such prominence already. And now postmodernism is trying to erase such boundaries, barriers between or distinguishing between these genres. You get the idea? And so far, this doesn't really put much daylight between modernism and postmodernism. But just think about such a definition. At a surface level, it's not going to give you much idea about, so what is this the only difference that is between modernism and postmodernism? One is appreciating the distinction between genres, one is not. That should not be the only case. We will have to check out for other details as well. Since the word eclectic suggests the use of fragmented forms. So fragmentation is obviously one of the features, essential features of modernism itself, which, as we have just said, are characteristic of modernism. So how will you take this as a better definition for postmodernism? There itself is the difference that we see in terms of the way in which they approach certain features of literature, certain innovations. To make it very clear, very simple, both are practicing fragmentation, both are opting for fragmentation, but one is doing it with a kind of nostalgia for the past, with a kind of lamenting for the past. That is, I wanted to be in the traditional mode, I didn't want to lose that past values. I am not happy about the fragmented kind of writing, but we are not left out with other options. So let me continue in this way itself. So that is the stance of modernism. But postmodernism is not like that. They say that yes, this is the only available thing. This is the only available mode of existence as well as writing. So we are celebrating what we are doing. That is the essential difference. The devices, the approaches they make some at least are the same. At least a few of the techniques or innovations on the part of modernists as well as postmodernists are the same. But the difference is where one is very confident, really confident about what they are doing. The other is lamenting about what they are doing. Modernism is lamenting about what they are doing. They are not confident about, they are not happy about what they are doing. The other one is very happy about what they are doing. They are confident. Yeah, that's only available. Our existence itself is like this, fragmented, inconsistent. You cannot predict anything. We did have academic calendars, this and this day, this and this activity, or such and such exams. But what about the pandemic time? Just think about that. So postmodernism, if you talk in terms of the life-like examples, if you talk in terms of life-like situation, it's about the realization that, yeah, this is only available. So we are no longer ready to lament over that. We would like to be confident about what we are doing. In literature, if you are practicing such fragmentation, if you are bringing forth such fragmentation, let us do it with a wholehearted happiness. That's what they mean. and such as the use of eclectic fragmented forms, which as we have just said are characteristic of modernism. That's why this definition at the surface level doesn't give you much. And now you see Eliot's the famous poem, The Wasteland, modernist poem. The Wasteland, for instance, is a collage of juxtaposed, incomplete stories of fragments of stories. 5 different sessions. You cannot even identify the speakers. First stanza, in the same part you can see multiple other speakers. All of a sudden one speaker to the other. The narrative point of view, narrative voice shifts back to. Sometimes coming back to the same narrator. Sometimes we cannot even distinguish between the narrators. When you read the poem, you will never understand anything. You will not understand anything at one reading. Because it's not as usual as the way you get other poems or other writings. That's obviously an epitome example for modernist poem. But what is the difference? It's postmodern. Why it is not postmodernist in that case? Because throughout the poem you can see a kind of lamenting. That is, the writer is not that happy about what he does. I have no other option left out. I am not left out with other options. That's why I am writing poems in this way. This is the stand taken by that writer. Okay. And so aleatory forms, meaning those which incorporate an element of randomness or chance. You are accepting that idea. Postmodernism accepts that idea. Aleatory forms, this inconsistency in life situations, characters, people, behavior, nature. Everywhere you are taking that, or you are accepting such a situation, such a possibility of being or existence. They are important to the Dadaists of 1917, who for instance made poems from sentences plucked randomly from newspapers. Think about some traditional classicist time period. A time period classicism is at its height. When classicism is at its height, and some of the writers taking or making collages, plucking sentences from here and there and submitting it as a poetry. No one would have accepted. But now that is done very deliberately. Dadaism, one of the sub-movements of modernism. Different nations, I told you, from different nations, different varieties and technically innovative movements also came during this time period. Sometimes mainly concentrating on painting, sometimes exclusively for music, sometimes something related with the architectural innovations. In any case, these are sub-movements: Dadaism, Futurism, Impressionism, Imagism. So what did they do? Just think about, they just have an idea about the way such poems are created. Such writings are created. Poems from sentences plucked randomly from newspapers. You know the song in C.I.D. Musa movie. And if you do not know Hindi, the musical way it is composed, it looks like a poem. But those who know Hindi very well can definitely identify it to be some fragments collected. Those are the names of movies, Hindi movies, as it is told in the movie. If you are traditional, if you are a traditionalist, believing traditional way of writing, you can never accept such writings, such combinations, such a random collection from here and there, random combination of words without having any sense of meaning. That's why sometimes I get you the example, Pista Summa Kira, from one of the recent Malayalam movies. What is told, what is sung there? What is the meaning communicated there? Did you find out any meaning? I don't know. I didn't find out any meaning. but that also is taken as a song. No one stays away from mentioning it to be a song. It's also the song from the movie, this and this movie. That's the way you mention that, because this is the postmodernist time when you have started accepting such innovations in writings and art. Not just in writing. Writing is one of the art forms. Already told you, don't be confused. Painting, music, architecture, all these are different varieties of different kinds of art forms. The use of parody and pastiche, finally, is clearly related to the abandonment of the divine pretensions of authorship. Divine pretensions of authorship implicit in the omniscient narratorial stance. See here, we have already seen the concept of death of the author, which also is moving along with the post-structuralism, almost the same time period of postmodernism. Simultaneously, they are moving side by side, so you can definitely identify how those concepts also might have influenced these thinkers or these the figures attached with the postmodernist tendency, where you are no longer concerned about the divine pretensions of authorship. In the past, it was every time about the author. Every time you wanted to talk about the author, you wanted to acknowledge the author. Now you are talking about new critical reading. You are concentrating on the text. You are giving too much of importance for the text. Explication the text you are going for. So the change started even before, not just with the modernism or postmodernism or structuralism or post-structuralism, even before. Your tendency towards art and reading began to shift from the authorial, the prominence given to the author, to the text. That's why we have the post-structuralist text with the title From Work to Text. From work to text. If you talk about work, it's about an author. Definitely, it has an author. Authorial voice is very important in that case. You're talking about ownership. Work. Whose work is that? More subjective it is. But text is open for textuality. It is potential. It has its own meaning potential. The capability of a text to produce meanings. Your reading is not your interpretation is not the same with another one's. The third one has another different meaning. Fourth one will come up with another meaning. Number of people reading the same text will come up with a different other meanings, different interpretations. That's why this authorial, the pretensions, divine pretension, that is, in the past, the writers were taken to be divine powers. Or how Plato was concerned about their being inspired divinely. They have their own some extraordinary powers. That's why they create writings. They write all these things because they are divinely inspired. So this concept had been carried forward all the time, all the while. But now we are having a different take on the situation. That omniscient narratorial stand. No longer you care about that. Postmodernism says that no one can be very omniscient. No one can be so guaranteeing. The world is like this. It is showing its inconsistency, its problems. At any time it can be toppled down. Just one nuclear weapon is more than enough to topple down the entire system. One pandemic is here to make everyone sit at home. irrespective of their power, position, richness. How many ideas you have been taking for granted all the while, but we are getting, this world is showing the situation, the whole situation, the pandemic time itself is giving us example how it can go beyond our control. So why are you talking about absolutes? That's the question of post-structuralism as well as of postmodernism. These are modern tendencies, modern approach towards life and art in general. Now, and this too was the vital element in modernism. It could be said then that one way of establishing the distinction between modernism and postmodernism is to dissolve the sequential link between them. Dissolving the sequential link. Though the terms modernism, postmodernism, post as a prefix refers to or is referring to a kind of continuity, not continuity but something after, so you cannot avoid. It's not like postmodernism doesn't have much to do with the classicism. There is no mention about classicism there. Immediate connection, if you want to draw, there is no term as such with the post in terms of classicism or realism, but here you see the term modernism along with that name, but we should distinguish between the two. And you see here retrospectively redefining certain aspects of modernism as postmodernism. That is the way we are going to approach this. Many similar stands you can see, fragmentation is common to both. Fragmentation in writing, in narration, everything is common to both. Both of them take that in creating art forms of different kinds, writing, music, painting. You know about abstract paintings of this time. It's very important to note down that sentence, redefining certain aspects of modernism, redefining certain aspects of modernism to be postmodernist. That is the first idea I gave you, fragmentation, both of them practice. But one is lamenting over what they are doing, the other is celebrating fragmentation. That's the only difference you can note down in that case. You get the point? Yes. According to this view, they are not two successive stages in the history of the art, but two opposed moods or attitudes. Please note down, they are not two successive stages at all, but two opposed moods. Their approach, their tone, their style, their approach, their mood, attitude, stand, everything is different. Differing at a great length. As suggested in the next paragraph, we will see the nature of the distinction between modernism and postmodernism is summarized in the excellent joint entry of the two terms in Jeremy Hawthorne's The Concise Glossary of Contemporary Literary Theory. I didn't highlight that part because in writing, as these definitions are, these texts are from where this definition of modernism or postmodernism are taken. You don't have to give much importance for that, but you write down the definition if possible when if asked for the exam. That's all. Okay, both means modernism and postmodernism give great prominence to fragmentation. The point that I explained right now, just before. Great prominence to fragmentation as a feature of 20th century art and culture. Both of them make use of fragmentation, but they do it in a very different mood. The modernist features it in such a way as to register a deep nostalgia for an earlier age where faith was full and authority intact. What must be the reason why they are too much attached with the past, or they are badly in want of the past earlier age of authority and all? They were situated in between both the time periods. They were there before the World War and saw the consistency, harmony, everything to be intact. And all of a sudden, this World War, they witnessed the World War shaking the whole of their life, their economics, their politics, their whole cultural domains got shaken. So they couldn't accept that with that much easiness or that much happiness. They wanted the past authority, the full authority where everything was intact. Faith, harmony, peace, wealth. So modernists couldn't accept the situation as easily as it is done by postmodernists. They used to hold a deep nostalgia for the past. Were very unhappy about it. To lose such a past where everything was intact, faith was full and authority intact. You see, Ezra Pound, the prominent figure, one of the major figures of modernist writing, what did he say? For instance, calls this major work, The Cantos, a rag bag. Is it a very good mention? No, it's a rag bag. It's almost like a rag bag. Implying that this is all that is possible in the modern age. I can only do this. I can only do this much. I wanted to do something better, but this is only possible with this time. Means he's not very happy. He's nostalgic about what is lost. Implying that this is all that is possible in the modern age, but also implying regret about the fact. We can definitely sense a kind of regret in the kind of comment in that comment about one's own poem, one's own writing. You can sense that unhappiness, regret, because this is only what is possible now. That's why I wanted to write in a very better manner, with much of harmony, too much of structures, too much of traditional, accepting or bringing traditional mode. I can't do that. That's the only way. I am not happy about bringing such or creating such writings. That's what Ezra Pound commented. Now, in his poem, Hughes Mulberry, he speaks of the First World War being fought for 2 groves of broken statues for a few thousand battered books. So that World War, the impact brought by that, no one was actually happy about. So writings began to be produced on the theme of the impact, the negative impact left out by world wars during that time. For a few thousand battered books, again, he's evidently pained. You can see, we are talking about broken statues. 2 or 3 lines from some poem, you take, war poetry. You go and read the impact, the aftermath, the shock left out by World War. You can see in certain poetry. There were poets who were much dedicated to write down poems, writings on war, and bringing forth the awareness that this is not for good, not for the good of anyone. This is going to be really problematic for all of us. Now, so he is pained, he is not happy. In lines from the same poem, like a tawdry cheapness shall outlast our days. We see to Callan beauty decreed in the marketplace. Everything is shattered, scattered. You don't have anything beautiful left out in this world. Everywhere you can see dead bodies. Think about the land where a nuclear explosion, even now it is not rebuilt. Even now the children are born there with a lot of deficiencies and health issues. So this world war is entirely problematic, and they wanted to communicate their sadness, their unhappiness about this at a great length through their writings as such. Here decreed in the marketplace by the rise of commercialism. So after the World War, after a few years, world was in a whole world, and different powers in the world was in a kind of hectic flight to bring back their stability, their economic growth, power, everything. So here you see again the insensibilities of commercialism, how human beings are turned into machines. You know, you learned Unknown Citizen. You know something about American Dream through different literary writings prescribed for you. American Dream, Unknown Citizen, how people, their identity is curtailed into some names, some numbers. Your name is not there, your name even is not written there, your identity is not there. So commercialism, the period of commercialism and the features of commercial rising, how human beings were turned into machines, how human beings were substituted with the machine power, how your identity was made good for nothing or invalid. So these writers wanted to react through their writings during that time, but they were always lamenting over that. That's why in the Wasteland 2 the persona says, as if despairingly of the poem, these fragments I have shod against my ruins. That's what he sings. That persona, the comment about this poem, it's about these fragments. This whole poem is like a fragment heaped like fragments. I have shod against my ruins. I'm ruined. I'm already degraded to this level. So this poem is almost like I'm collecting the heap, the baggages against my ruins. Okay. Then, so despairingly about the poem, it's a comment is very despairing one. The poet is not happy about what he does. Or the writers of that modernist time were unhappy about this fragmentation technique to be brought to their art forms, but that is only possible. That's what they took. Their stance looked like. They could never celebrate this fragmentation or inconsistent narrative voice, narrative stand, subjective matters, themes. Now, for instance, like this, there is a ton of lament, pessimism and despair about the world in general, which finds its appropriate representation in these fractured art forms. These are almost like fractured art forms. Why? Why these are fractured art forms? Fractured, you know, when you have fracture on your body, you are not happy about it. You are much uncomfortable. You have pain, you have uncomfort. So that's why that the same thing is coming up with the tone of lament, pessimism. What do you mean by pessimism? Opposite of optimism. You are optimistic. That means you are confident about a better time period. You are suffering at present, but still you are not completely lost in you are not completely engulfed in lack of confidence. You expect something positive to happen sooner or later. That's what you mean by optimism. Pessimism is the negative view about everything. You are not confident, you are not positive about anything coming, anything to come. Some people are very optimistic even after facing a lot of challenges. Still they are not giving up, they are ready to try something better. try for something better. Pessimistic, or they are like, oh, the world is lost, its harmony is lost, we cannot bring it back to its formal stage. So despair about the world which finds its appropriate representation in these fractured art forms. So that is told there. Such a world gets appropriate representation only in such fragmented, fractured art forms. That's why they are compelled to take that techniques or such features in their writings. Otherwise you would ask the question, if they are that unhappy about producing such works of art, why can't they stick on to traditionals? Who compelled them to? But they at the same time want to do justice to what is happening in the whole world. The picture of the present world. They wanted to get a picture through their writings as well. So sticking on again to the traditional structures, traditional way of narration will not be doing anything, will not have anything to do with. It's almost like you are fancifully narrating about one of the, you just think about that. If modernist writers still going on with the traditional ways, traditional harmonious narrative, authorial voices, everything, it's equal to you are creating fanciful pictures about something. You are communicating, you are idealizing something which is not the same. Okay, I will talk about the cantonment area of this time. I am talking about cantonment area, where you have open dumping, but cantonment area as such you expect to be very perfect without having any waste or anything. But nowadays when I walk I can see open dumping. It was like better, it was better in the past, because open dumping was there at one part, but none of the waste materials got scattered on the way where we could walk along. Nowadays the situation has changed. Maybe because of the pandemic time, much cleaning is not taking place, maybe, we don't know. But think about that time I saw such a very beautiful scenery where obviously the walking spaces, route was with much better flowers, trees, lawn. An area was with the lawn where they were almost always cleaning. Every time that was kept intact. So I write about that and I get it to you today, tell you to opt for that route to walk, to go to our bus stand. You will curse me like anything, because that route is not at all with the kind of scenic beauty, cleanliness. Now waste is just flying here and there with a lot of animals, street animals. They were already there. In the past also those were there, but now it is almost like it is raising punk. We have to face pungent smell coming out of the waste. It's not actually cantonment area, but the way leading to that. I'm talking about Kannur area, leading to the hospital stand area. But if I get you the poem that I wrote 1 year back, without seeing the reality of that space now, you could ask me the question, you can ask me, you can blame me for the kind of misrepresentation that I make in my art. Why did you why did you hide such a reality through the fantasy-like representation, romantic picturization of the cantonment area of this time? Why did you hide that reality of this time? So such questions would come from the reading public. If even now when you see such a world with this much problems, You are still sticking on to the traditional structures, harmonious characterization. So you are likely to be blamed. That's why even with the sense of loss, sense of lamentation, lament, these writers are shifting back to such narrative technique, or they are also opting that, at least though without much happiness, optimism, they try to bring forth such elements in their writings at present. So the collages of chord switches, all this variety you can just read and leave out. So for example, which mix painted areas of canvas with random clippings from newspapers, timetables and advertisements. This is about making collage. You are making collages. For the postmodernist, by contrast, fragmentation is exhilarating, liberating phenomena. See that? It's a liberating phenomena. They celebrate it like anything. They feel like there is nothing wrong in fragmented art forms. Yeah, we are happy about what we are doing. Symptomatic of our escape from the claustrophobic embrace of fixed systems of beliefs. That is claustrophobic embrace. They think that if we are still sticking on to this traditional characterization, omniscient narrator, authorial voice, you are chaining your creativity inside the claustrophobic structures of narration. You are embracing the claustrophobic systems of belief. Why should you do that? After all, creativity is about freedom. Freedom of representation, freedom of expression. So why are you thinking or going back? You are chaining yourself with your fascination, obsession for what you call the traditional belief systems. Why should you do that? That's the question. Escape from the claustrophobic embrace of this traditional systems of belief, fixed system. Those are fixed systems. No longer you are supposed to stick on to. You just access the freedom of the time and narrative innovations. Why are you lamenting over that? You should not. Be happy about what you are doing. That's what is told there. So in a word, the modernist laments fragmentation while the postmodernist celebrates it. One is lamenting over what they are doing, the other is celebrating. Means one is happy, the other is not happy. But the thing done, the stand taken is the same with a different approaching method. Celebratory mood, and other one is with a lamenting mood. So that's the second and related difference we will talk in the coming session. Matter of tone and attitude we will talk about later in the next session. Thank you so much for listening.